In every office, there are mysteries. Missing pens, stolen staplers, and sometimes vanishing lunches. Most people want the thief caught, but what if the thief isn't who you think? What if behind the stolen food, there's a story about hunger, shame, and unexpected kindness? This is the story of how one missing lunch changed everything. Part 1. The Phantom Lunch Thief. Everyone at the office thought I'd finally caught the lunch thief. But the truth? I wasn't hunting him down. I was feeding him. For months, our office fridge had been a crime scene. Tupperware vanished without a trace. Sandwiches were swiped like wallets. By 12:15, sometimes 12:30 at the latest, someone would open that fridge door and erase a piece of someone's day. It was clockwork. At first, I was furious. I'd walk in ready to eat the leftovers I'd carefully packed the night before, my garlic chicken with rice or my mom's lentil soup. And instead, I'd find greasy fingerprints inside my glass container. Sometimes it came back empty. Sometimes it didn't come back at all. Whoever the thief was, they weren't even polite about it. You can imagine the gossip that spread across the cubicles. It's got to be someone in accounting. No, HR. They're always weirdly secretive. One guy swore it had to be an intern. Kids these days don't respect lunch boundaries. But then one morning, everything changed. I came in earlier than usual, my coffee still scalding hot in the travel mug. The break room was empty, except for the sound of the fridge door creaking open. I slowed my steps and saw him. A man I didn't recognize. Thin, pale, wearing the kind of discount button-down you buy in a hurry. He stood staring into the fridge, just staring, like the rows of plastic bags and foil-wrapped containers were some kind of cruel joke. Then he shut the door without touching anything and walked out empty-handed. He didn't see me, but I saw him. And what I noticed wasn't theft. It was despair. His eyes were red, like he'd just finished crying in his car. His shoulders slumped like he was carrying something invisible but crushing. That image haunted me the whole day. Later, I found out he was a temp, just started last week. No one even remembered his name. And for the first time, instead of picturing some greedy office bandit, I imagined someone hungry, someone maybe ashamed of being hungry. The next Monday, I tried something new. I packed 2 lunches. One in my usual glass container, the one with the green lid. The second in a cheap plastic box I'd bought in bulk at the dollar store. On top of it, I stuck a sticky note for anyone who forgot their lunch. I placed it in the back left corner of the fridge, the same spot where food always seemed to vanish. Then I waited. Sure enough, by 12:20, the plastic container was gone. And when I came back later, it was there again, empty, washed, like someone had actually rinsed it out in the sink before returning it. That little detail stuck with me. If you've ever worked in an office, you know people don't wash their dishes. Not their mugs, not their plates. If they do, it's a quick rinse. Not a careful job. But this container was clean, almost respectfully clean. On Friday, I opened the fridge and found something new. A single peppermint candy sitting neatly on top of the empty container. A thank you. Small, silly, but real. I didn't tell anyone. Not the gossip hounds at the copier, not the self-appointed fridge police. Everyone assumed I'd installed a camera or chewed someone out because suddenly my real lunch was never touched again. My reputation in the break room jumped a few notches. But the truth was simpler, quieter. I wasn't hunting a thief. I was feeding a ghost. The thing is, I wasn't doing it out of sainthood. I was angry, bitter, more than I wanted to admit. I'd slammed my fridge door at home. I'd cursed into my coffee. And then, against my better judgment, I found myself protecting this stranger at 12:20 every day. A strange feeling, helping someone you'll never really talk to. A quiet rebellion against the office rules. Or maybe it was my way of convincing myself that food, at least, doesn't always have to be a battlefield. If management installs cameras, I won't stop them. If the mystery ends, it ends. Until then, I'll keep packing 2 lunches. Part 2. A Ghost with a Name. The peppermint candy haunted me more than the empty lunches ever did. It sat on my desk all morning, gleaming like a tiny piece of proof. Someone had noticed. Someone cared enough to leave a thank you, even if it was wrapped in cellophane, worth less than a penny. It made me think about the man I'd seen in the break room, the temp, the ghost. I realized I didn't even know his name. He drifted through the office like a shadow, head down, papers clutched to his chest, earbuds in even when no music was playing. He never joined conversations, never laughed at the printer jokes, or complained about the coffee. At lunch, while everyone gathered in clumps, finance in one corner, IT in another, he disappeared. Not outside, not in the cafeteria, just vanished. And when he returned, it was always with that same slumped posture, that same look of someone trying not to exist too loudly. By Wednesday, the peppermint wasn't alone. On top of the cleaned plastic container sat a folded napkin. Inside it was a single sticky note written in sharp, blocky handwriting. Thank you. That was all. No signature. I slipped it into my drawer like contraband. I don't know why I felt protective over it. Maybe because no one else knew about this secret exchange, and I didn't want them to. It was fragile, like glass. Too much light and it might shatter. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I lingered by the fridge around 12:15, pretending to refill my water bottle. And right on schedule, the door opened. It was him. Tall, but somehow folded in on himself. Hair too long, shirt wrinkled in ways that said it wasn't from fashion, but from sleeping in it. He reached for the plastic container with a kind of gentleness, like he was afraid it might disappear. He held it close, almost reverently, before slipping into the hallway. I wanted to say something. It's okay, you don't have to sneak. I packed that for you. But my throat locked up. I wasn't ready to break the illusion. Maybe because I wasn't sure what would happen next. At 1 o'clock, the container was back, clean, as always. That night I found myself thinking about him at the grocery store. Should I buy extra rice? Would pasta travel better? Maybe sandwiches would be easier. My cart started to look like I was feeding a family, not just myself. And maybe that was the point. I was feeding someone's son, someone's brother, maybe even someone's dad. Someone who, for reasons I couldn't guess yet, was struggling enough to need a stranger's leftovers. The office, of course, kept buzzing with theories. It stopped because they were scared. No, they finally got caught. It's weird, right, that it just ended. I kept my head down and let them talk. If they wanted to imagine some grand victory, let them. The truth was happening quietly, out of sight, in the back left corner of the fridge. By Friday, another note appeared. This one longer. I don't know how to thank you. I'll pay you back someday. The words were careful, but there was something raw in them, something heavy. I traced the ink with my thumb and realized I didn't want payback. I wanted him to eat. That weekend, I couldn't shake the image of him staring into the fridge, empty-handed. I thought about the lunches I'd taken for granted all my life. Growing up, my mom always packed too much food. Leftovers were an afterthought, not a lifeline. The idea of an adult man reduced to scavenging the break room fridge gnawed at me. Monday morning, I made chicken stir-fry. 2 portions. I packed an extra orange, peeled and sectioned in a small bag. It felt like tucking in a kindness, something sweet to soften whatever rough edges his day held. When I checked the fridge at 1 p.m., the orange peel was gone. The bag was folded neatly inside the container as if to say, I noticed this too. That night, I dreamed of him, not as a thief, but as a man standing outside in the cold, hands shoved in his pockets, looking in through a lit window at a table he didn't belong to. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe this wasn't about hunger alone. Maybe it was about loneliness. Because food is never just food. It's connection, it's memory, it's proof you exist, that someone thought about you long enough to make sure you had what you needed. The following week, I did something reckless. I slipped a note under the lid of the plastic container. It's okay, really. You don't owe me anything. I wasn't sure if he'd see it as kindness or exposure. Maybe he'd stop taking the food altogether, scared that I knew. Maybe he'd avoid me forever. But when I opened the fridge the next day, the container was back, washed with a new note tucked neatly inside. This time, it had a name. My name is Daniel. Thank you for not treating me like a thief. I sat at my desk staring at those words. For weeks, he'd been a ghost, a shadow at 12:20. Now he had a name, Daniel. And suddenly, this wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a story. Our story. Part 3. The investigation. The moment Daniel gave me his name, the air in the office seemed to shift. Not for anyone else. No one else had the faintest clue. But for me, the ghost in the break room fridge was no longer faceless. He was Daniel. And knowing his name made everything more complicated. The very next week, the manager sent out an email with the subject line, Office Fridge Policy Reminder. The body of the email was standard corporate nonsense, the kind that could put a hummingbird to sleep. Label your food, respect your colleagues, theft will not be tolerated. But beneath the HR politeness, the message was clear. Someone had complained again. Someone wasn't ready to let the case of the disappearing lunches die. Suddenly, everyone became a detective. People started labeling their sandwiches with passive-aggressive Sharpie notes. Property of Karen, touch this and die. Sticky traps of yogurt cups and protein bars were placed in obvious sight, daring the thief to try again. The gossip ramped up. I bet it's someone higher up. That's why no one's caught them. Or an intern. They don't care about roles. You know what? Could be a janitor. It was all theater. Everyone loved a villain they could point fingers at. And all the while, Daniel kept eating at 12:20 and I kept packing 2 lunches. But now the ritual carried a new weight. Every time I slipped the extra container into the fridge, I felt the heat of invisible eyes. What if someone noticed I always had extra? What if they traced it back? One afternoon, I walked into the break room just as Daniel was rinsing the container in the sink. We locked eyes for the first time. His face went pale, like a child's caught red-handed. Daniel, I said softly. His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. It's okay, I added quickly. Really? For a moment, I thought he might run. Instead, he set the container gently on the counter, grabbed a paper towel, and left without a word. That night, I found a note waiting in the container. Please don't tell anyone. I can't afford to lose this job. My chest tightened. He wasn't just afraid of being embarrassed. He was afraid of being exposed and maybe fired. The next few days, the office paranoia only grew. Management announced they were considering installing cameras in the break room to protect employee property. The lunchroom detectives practically salivated at the thought. But for me, panic bloomed. A camera would end everything. Daniel would be caught, and his secret would spill out under fluorescent lights and company gossip. The man who only just trusted me with his name would become an office punchline. I started thinking of escape plans. Could I take the fall? Claim I was leaving the second lunches? But that wouldn't make sense. Why would I steal my own food? Could I redirect suspicion onto the corporate vending machine that occasionally ate dollars without refunding them? Ridiculous. Every idea collapsed under the weight of reality. Meanwhile, Daniel grew thinner. His clothes hung a little looser. He looked like a man stretched too thin, trying to hold himself together with safety pins. Whatever his life outside these walls looked like, it wasn't kind to him. One Thursday, as I placed the extra lunch in the fridge, I slipped in another note. "You don't have to keep hiding. Let me help." I wasn't sure what I meant by that. Money? A ride? Just listening? The note sat heavy in my chest as I went back to my desk. At 1 o'clock, the container returned. Inside was another folded scrap of paper. "You already have. More than you know." That night, I couldn't focus on anything. I sat on my couch with the TV muted, staring at that note over and over. It was gratitude, yes, but it was also resignation. Like he didn't believe there could be more. Like the lunches were the lifeline keeping him afloat, and nothing else could change. Friday morning, the hammer dropped. A new email, subject line, camera installation scheduled. The break room would have surveillance by Monday. The office buzzed with excitement, like a true crime podcast had just been greenlit. People joked about finally catching the lunch bandit in HD. For me, it felt like a countdown to disaster. That afternoon, I found Daniel in the hallway. For the first time, I spoke directly. "They're putting cameras in." He froze. His eyes darted to the floor. His lips trembled like he wanted to speak but couldn't. Then he just nodded once sharply and walked away. At 12:20, the fridge stayed quiet. My second lunch sat, untouched. And for the first time in weeks, Daniel didn't come back. Part 4. The Vanishing. By Monday morning, the camera was up. A little black eye perched in the corner of the break room ceiling, its red light blinking like a metronome. Everyone cheered like justice had finally arrived. "About time," Karen said, slapping her yogurt onto the counter. "Let's see the thief try something now," someone else chuckled. I stood by the coffee machine, my stomach twisting. The fridge door opened and shut throughout the morning, but my second lunch sat untouched. The cheap plastic container, the sticky note, the little secret ritual, it all became invisible under the gaze of that blinking red eye. Daniel didn't show up at 12:20. Not Monday, not Tuesday, not Wednesday. His desk, a temporary one tucked against the wall by the copier, stayed empty. By Thursday, his nameplate was gone. That was it. No announcement, no farewell email, just vanished. The office moved on. The lunch bandit became an old joke, a solved mystery with no culprit. The fridge became boring again. People went back to fighting over the last hazelnut creamer or leaving passive-aggressive notes about cleaning up spilled soup. But I couldn't move on. Every day, I found myself glancing up the corner of the fridge where the second container used to disappear. Every day, I waited for a peppermint, a folded napkin, a blocky "thank you" scribble. Nothing came. The notes were still in my drawer. I took them out at night, smoothing the creases, tracing the ink. They felt like pieces of evidence from a story no one else believed happened. Proof that for a few weeks, I'd matter to someone in a way that went beyond small talk or email chains. But who was Daniel really? I knew nothing beyond his first name. No last name, no address, just fragments. The wrinkled shirt, the tired eyes, the weight of someone carrying too many invisible battles. The not knowing gnawed at me. On Friday, I asked around casually, "Hey, whatever happened to that temp, Daniel?" Blank stares, shrugs. "Oh, the tall guy? Didn't he quit? Maybe his contract ended. No idea. He wasn't here long." He'd slipped through the cracks, like a ghost who never wanted to be noticed in the first place. That night, lying in bed, I thought about all the people who go unseen. The ones who work beside us but vanish when the day's over. The ones whose names we never learn because we're too busy protecting our own routines. Daniel had been hungry, but not just for food. He was hungry for a kind of grace this world doesn't hand out freely. And all I had given him was lunch. The following Monday, I packed 2 lunches anyway. Habit, maybe. Hope. I carried the second container all the way to work, then stood in front of the fridge, staring at the blinking red camera. I couldn't put it inside anymore. The illusion was broken. So instead, I walked out. I left the building, crossed the street to the bench by the bus stop. For 15 minutes, I sat there with the extra container in my lap, watching strangers rush past. Any one of them could have been Daniel, or someone like him, someone who needed more than I could guess. Finally, I stood and placed the container on the bench. No note, no explanation, just a quiet offering. When I came back an hour later, it was gone. Maybe someone threw it away. Maybe someone ate it. I'll never know. But it felt right. Like Daniel's story hadn't ended. It had just shifted, spilled out of the narrow hallway of our office into the wider world. Because the truth was, Daniel wasn't just Daniel. He was every person who ever looked into a fridge and found nothing. Every person who washed the container carefully, hoping not to be seen as a burden. Every person who left a peppermint behind as proof they still had something small to give. That night, I packed 2 lunches again. Part 5. 2 lunches. Weeks passed. The office settled back into its dull rhythm, as though the lunch bandit had never existed. People talked about football scores, Netflix shows, the latest layoffs rumor. The fridge once again became just a fridge, sterile, humming, boring. But I never stopped packing 2 lunches. At first, it felt like superstition, a ritual I couldn't break, like knocking on wood. I'd wake early, cook, divide the meal in 2. My hands did it before my brain could argue. 1 container for me, 1 for, well, someone. I left the second lunch in different places. A bus stop, a park bench, on the stone ledge outside the public library. Some mornings, it disappeared within minutes. Other times, I'd find it still there after work, cold and untouched, and I'd carry it home, a little embarrassed. But even then, I didn't stop. It wasn't about certainty anymore. It was about possibility. Because Daniel had taught me something without ever saying it outright, that the smallest gestures can live larger than we imagine. A box of stir-fry, an orange peeled into segments, a note that simply says, "It's okay." The world is full of invisible battles. People sit beside us on the train, stand behind us in line, shuffle past us in hallways, carrying storms we can't see. Hunger, shame, grief, loneliness. And sometimes all it takes is one small kindness to remind them they're not erased. I never saw Daniel again. Not at the office, not in the grocery store, not by the bus stop. He remained what he had been from the start, a ghost passing through my life, leaving only scraps of handwriting and the memory of peppermint. But in a way, that was enough. One Friday evening, as I was cleaning my desk, I found the notes again. Folded, worn, fragile. Thank you. Please don't tell anyone. My name's Daniel. You already have, more than you know. I tucked them back into my drawer, but something stopped me. Instead, I pinned them to my corkboard, right where I'd see them every morning. Not as reminders of loss, but as reminders of what's possible when we pay attention. Because what started as anger over a missing lunch had turned into something I couldn't have planned. A lesson in compassion. I had wanted justice. What I found was grace. And maybe that's the whole point. We don't get to choose which strangers cross our paths. We don't always get closure or answers. Sometimes people vanish before we understand their whole story. But the kindness we show them doesn't vanish. It lingers. It echoes. Every lunch I pack now is for Daniel and for everyone like him. For the invisible. For the people the cameras will never see. So yes, I still pack 2 lunches. One for me, one for the ghost. Not because I'm a hero, not because I'm looking for recognition, but because someone out there might be sitting in a car, wiping their eyes, staring into an empty fridge, and if the universe is cruel enough to let that happen, maybe the least I can do is meet it with an extra sandwich. And who knows, maybe one day someone will leave another peppermint behind. We spend so much of our lives passing strangers we'll never really know. But every once in a while, a simple act, a shared meal, a note, even a peppermint can remind someone they're not invisible. Maybe we can't solve every problem, but we can pack 2 lunches. And sometimes, that's enough. At LaLa Family, we believe that every story of family, whether it's about joy, struggle, loss, or new beginnings, has the power to connect us. Life is messy and unpredictable, but it's also filled with love, resilience, and moments worth sharing. That's why we've built this channel, to bring you powerful, heart-touching stories that remind us we're never truly alone. If you've ever faced hardship, if you've ever felt the weight of parenthood, or if you simply believe in the strength of love and community, this channel is for you. Our videos aren't just stories. They're windows into real human experiences that inspire hope, courage, and empathy. But we can't grow this community without you. By clicking subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're joining a family. Every like helps us reach more people who may need to hear these stories right now. And every share spreads the message that even in the darkest times, there is always light to be found. So if these stories move you, if they make you think, or if they touch your heart even a little, don't just watch, take action. Hit that subscribe button, tap the like button, and share our videos with friends and loved ones. Together, we can build a community where stories heal, inspire, and bring people closer. Welcome to LaLa Family, where love, resilience, and hope live on.